People, we're back in Portsmouth, and this week we've got questions for April Gilbert of Parenting Network.
Yeah, my home was very dysfunctional. It was very full of chaos, lots of fights, lots of huge tempers, lots of psychological and emotional abuse. I never felt safe. To me, it just felt like I was hollow. I just didn't feel truly present in anything that I did. I had nothing to bond with my dad over. And then, he gave me a drink at 11, and I just thought, wow. And I don't know how I'll ever be able to explain it or whether I'll ever know quite what it was, but a light bulb happened to me. And I just realised I was recreating a generational cycle. I was drinking too much. My mental health was really low. I was struggling to be present with my children. And so where I find myself today is kind of a product of the journey I went on to take when I had that moment. And anybody that thinks, I don't know how to tell somebody all of this, because this feels so heavy and I feel like inherently dysfunctional and I don't feel like I deserve this help. I would be honoured to be a bridge for somebody and say to them, there's no judgment here. And actually, there's loads of places that we can find you help.
Alright, so April.
Hi.
We're here.
Yeah.
And thank you for being the guest on the show.
Thanks for having me.
And I'm really looking forward to this. And so, cool. What's going on show is where we shine a light on people doing things in communities. And you are doing something in the community that needs to basically be highlighted. So, cool. Little tradition we have on this show is, instead of me giving you an introduction, I like to give it over to you to basically tell us who you are. So, in a nutshell, who is April Gilbert?
It's still tricky to answer that. So I am a mum of three. Mm-hmm. I grew up in Pompey and I have had a very eclectic career here, but I currently work at the Parenting Network and I manage the operations here. And I live around the corner and I enjoy life in Portsmouth with my three kids.
Nice.
And husband.
Wholesome. So, okay, that's you in a nutshell. Take me back. Are you from Portsmouth?
Yep. Born in Portsmouth, born in St Mary's. And I grew up in Southsea. Okay. So I grew up in a really nice house, actually. Lovely house. And I went to Portsmouth High School for Girls for all my life. I'm a lifer.
Wow.
4 to 18. Grew up here, did various things in between. I'm sure we'll sort of get to some of my huge career failings along the way. And then it's all sort of married up to have me here now. So.
Okay. Amazing. And how was school for you then?
So this is, for me, it's been a really big part of my journey trying to answer that question. Because my experience is that I grew up in quite a troubled home and a very dysfunctional family. And so it's kind of marred my experience throughout my childhood. So it's difficult to unpick what I liked and didn't like about the school and what I wasn't feeling okay about with the rest of my life. I was for some time quite resentful that I felt like I was invisible. But I've come to realise I was very fortunate to go to that school and I was afforded lots of lovely opportunities because of it. So I'm very grateful for that opportunity actually. And I left with, some decent enough grades that got me on to the next stages that I wanted to do. So I do owe a lot to it in that regard. So it was all right. All girls, bit mean.
Girls, I can imagine. I went to an all boys school and that was...
Was it? So what were your labels as boys then?
I was just lads.
we were slags or lesbians and there was no in between. So, that was...
Amazing. Oh man. Okay, so you said there that you had some troubles at home or how it made you view how your school life basically. So your troubles at home made you view your school life in a particular way. So how was home life to you? How are you an only child?
No, so I have got, I'm the eldest of 10.
Okay.
But they're all different ages, through to the youngest being as young as my youngest son. So all the ages in between that. But I grew up with, there were 4 of us that grew up at the same sort of time, so similar ages. And yeah, my home was very dysfunctional. It was very full of chaos. Like there was just lots of fights, lots of huge tempers, lots of psychological and emotional abuse. I never felt safe. And I know that people recognised that something was wrong at school, because people often used to sort of say things like, oh, I know home's tricky, or trouble at home, really sort of wish-washy generalisations. And so I knew that people recognised that something was a bit different, and they used to give me a bit of grace for that. Like if I didn't have my homework, or if I was a bit late or something, that I could hear that teachers would echo that back to me. Oh, I know things are a bit tricky. So I knew that people recognised it a bit. And there were certainly periods of time in my school when my truancy was like 50%. I really wasn't there. And so my journey reflecting on that at first was anger, because I recognise as an adult now with my own children that actually those things were clear indicators that maybe things weren't okay. But as a child, yeah, the language was loose around that, tricky. We wouldn't like to, we don't want to push you on that, don't air your dirty laundry sort of vibes. So
interesting. And it's a 50% there, your truancy or bunk in school. Why was you bunking school?
I think that, depending on the time when you look at it, was a mixture. In the beginning, that would be, I wasn't been taken to school. Often there would be fights through the night. I wouldn't have slept, so I'd be kept off. It was normally as a consequence of chaos in the house. As I got a bit older, and then I was in sixth form, so the college equivalent, then that was more my own will. I was just sort of disengaged, really. I was so distracted by all of the impact of everything that I couldn't focus. I wasn't very present, and I had started at that point to embed some really good self-sabotage into my life, and that actually became quite a theme for me. So
really, what do you mean by self-sabotage?
Just getting in my own way, I suppose. It's been again, I feel really fortunate, right? So as we sort of move through the ages of my life, you'll find me here at this point where I have been able to access resources and support to learn about what was happening then. So I can call it self-sabotage now, but maybe that's not helpful for anybody that's listening that doesn't understand their behaviour yet, because to me it just felt like I was like hollow. I just didn't feel like I could be truly present in anything that I did. I've likened it to like operating an avatar of me, and I just felt totally disconnected from the people around me and life experiences that were supposed to be joyful. I just remember I could never feel that joy. I just, it's so difficult to explain exactly what that feeling is, but it's horrible. When you don't, you see other people reacting joyfully to things or enjoying taking care of themselves. And I honestly it used to baffle me to watch people have that sort of enjoyment in their life. I just felt really lonely and very, very disconnected from my peers. So I think, for me, that just meant I didn't really want to be around it much. And so, I started to find distractions and ways to sort of change the way that I felt about everything. So yeah, I started when I was 11. My dad introduced me to drinking, and as it turns out, drinking is a huge part of the family, and he was really clear about that. He said, this is how we focus. This is you have a couple of drinks, you get your head on straight, you start to understand everything. This is how we do that. And I had nothing to bond with my dad over. And then, he gave me a drink at 11, and I just thought, wow, I felt so good. I felt like this sense of just like sort of false safety. It felt really warm. I just felt like, oh, that's really nice. I like that a lot. And so from that point, that started becoming the thing that we did together. And he used to take me drinking with him. I'd be like 13 at Portsmouth Football Club in the fancy bit, like dressed up, getting blasted with him. And it's just, I felt grown up. I felt like we were bonding, and that was really nice. I felt sort of mature, and it was cool, and I liked the way the drinking made me feel at the time. So I just, I'd started to find things that were going to change the way that I felt, and trying not to sit with myself, really, because I didn't like the rest of it.
Okay. Did you have any peers at that time?
Yeah, I had friends, and some of them are still friends, and I think it's been really interesting to be on this journey and continue those friendships. And a friend who was quite present in the years of the chaos, and I guess I was sort of like in my, I don't know, from like 11, 12, that sort of early pre-teen phase. And she used to come to my house a lot, and she witnessed quite a lot of it. And I had, I put a post up through some of my work platforms talking about trauma and about getting help. And she messaged me and she said, I felt sort of really uneasy when I read that message, and I just wanted to reach out and say to you, like, I'm so sorry I didn't see you and I didn't hear you. I did know those things were happening. And, we were just kids. She didn't know any different than I did. She knew that things were difficult at home. We had that same sort of language. Of course, she couldn't have done anything at all. And it was wonderful to have her friendship while those things were happening. But it's been really nice to stay connected with those people, because it helps to keep me grounded in what I know to be true. Because I think in dysfunctional family systems, certainly in mine, it's really easy to be totally gaslit out of your own truths. The moment that you sort of pull people up on bad behaviour, when the whole family system is dysfunctional, you're gaslit, you're a black sheep, and you need to get in line. So it's helpful actually to have people that have continued to be my friend up until this day, because it helps to ground me and know that actually, I didn't make it up. It was my reality, and like she did see me, so that was nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so outside of the family, did you do anything else? Did you have hobbies? What did you do outside of the family? Like, did you have any sort of goals, if you will?
So I loved swimming, and I used to swim well. In fact, I still can swim well. I've just got, like zero fitness. But so I did that for a number of years. And I used to swim with like Katie Sexton, and like I was proper. I was all right. But as time went on, it definitely started to get impacted by, it's a very big commitment to swim. You have to go like 6 times a week, and before and after school, and actually for my family that was unattainable, but to get me there, it was so much And, you know, we haven't really touched on my mum, but she was 16 when she met my dad, and she got pregnant with me very soon after. And she had left prolific trauma and come straight on to have me, and then 3 children quite quickly after that. So to ask her to help to support me through extracurricular stuff was, you know, was never going to happen, to be honest. There was a lot on her plate.
Wow.
So I started not making all the sessions, and then I found myself, you know, feeling embarrassed about going. And the lady that used to train us was like fierce. And she used shame quite a lot. And I remember also, I think I started quite liking food, and I got quite tubby. And I remember her like calling me up on it on the side of the pool in front of everyone, saying like, you've got to sort this out. And I think like just shame, really, just lots and lots of shame about being late, shame about, you know, not looking after myself. And it just meant that I quit. I just quit.
Fair.
Yeah.
Why did you quit? Was it like
shame? I think, you know, I was too ashamed to go there when I hadn't made it, when everyone else had gone. I was too ashamed to go there when I didn't look the way that I was supposed to look to be a swimmer. But I think, you know, naturally I was skilled at it, and maybe in a different life I would have pursued it, and it would have been something. I don't know. I'm lucky to get to a point in my life where everything was just the way it was, and that's that. So.
Okay. So yeah, touching on that then, what was your relationship like with your mum?
It was intense. So my job in my family was the family caretaker. It was to look after my siblings, and it was to help to support my mum through her different challenges. It was to try and sort of calm down my dad when he was high. So he was a massive drinker, and, you know, there were loads, most nights he'd come in after being at the pub, and I'd get, you know, woken up in the middle of the night, and I would be the referee for the argument. And it was, you know, and if my mum didn't let him in, then he'd throw a rock and smash my window over my bed. So it was like just constant high alert. You know, my parents shared a lot about their own experiences with me and their own pain. So I felt really, I felt compelled to protect them. And I felt that it was absolutely my role to try and help them be okay, because they had had such a difficult life. And that I was on this earth, and that was my job. And, you know, my dad used to sort of task me with making sure that everybody got together and everybody was okay. And when those things didn't happen, because he was like actively working against that, it was always my fault. And so as a child, I just grew up feeling like I was born to support my family, and I wasn't doing a very good job. And I really didn't have a sense of identity outside of that, to be honest. So, yeah.
Wow. So when would you say you developed that sense of identity?
About 3.5 years ago. So, yeah, it took me a really long time to recognise that the way that I had grown up and the way that I had gone on to start living my life was maladaptive and dysfunctional too. So because I didn't have a sense of identity, I relied on other people's perception of me to define myself. So people would say, you know, you're so grown up for your age, you know, so mature. And they'd see some of the stuff that I had to deal with, and they'd be like, wow, you know, you're just so grown up. So I was like, yeah, I'm so grown up. And they say, well, you're great with kids. I had these brothers and sisters. I didn't have a say in the matter that I was going to be sort of doing all of the parental duties for them and cooking for them and dressing them and taking care of them when they weren't sad. You know, like we were left overnights and for periods of time when we were all single digits. So I just did that. because that's what I was supposed to do. And people said, yeah, you're great with kids. So I was like, oh, great. Okay, great with kids. So I'm growing up, great with kids. Okay, cool. So that's what I'll do then. And so I got married quite young. And I had 3 children. Boom, boom, boom. And, you know, everybody used to call me at school like Mama Apes. I was the caregiver. They used to come to me for advice. I was, you know, mature and good with children. So I was like, okay, that's what I am. And then I had children. And then I was like, you know, everybody else is growing up around me, and I'm starting to recognize that actually I don't know what I'm doing. I do not know what I'm doing. I can change nappies and feed babies, and that's all good, but these children are starting to grow up around me, you know, and like I can start to see their personalities develop, and I'm starting to see my own childhood reflected back at me, and it just was intense. And it at the same time, we were going through an experience with my parents who were separated, around supporting one of my younger siblings. And we had to go through court, and it was horrific. And we had to start delving into some of these challenges. And in doing that, I had also learned that my brothers and sisters had had a similar experience to me. And I had thought that I had shielded them from that. So when I learned that actually they had had the similar abuse to what I had experienced, it just threw me into a total tailspin, because then what was I useful for? You know, I used to put myself in the way of the danger and protect them from it, because I thought, well, at least, you know, that they won't have to tolerate that, they won't have to be impacted by that, and you know, like that is my duty. And then I learned that actually it just happened to all of us, just at different times, and that really impacted me, because then I understood at that point that my identity was like, my self-identity was deeply rooted in this idea that I protected people, and I didn't protect them. And actually, you know, I started to recognize that I really didn't have the skills to support my children as they were growing as well. So I started to just totally wobble. And I started having like these horrific panic attacks. It was horrible. I was a business owner at this point. I had just started a business, and it was really intense, and I was working like stupid hours. And I was working with some people that were very much like they pushed, and I had, for starters, no sense of putting in boundaries for myself and saying, no, that's too much for me, I can't do that, you know, I'm not able to do that at the moment, making space for myself. I couldn't do it, so I just kept sort of absorbing work, and I threw myself into it, and I started having these horrible panic attacks, and I felt I was really panicked and like hypervigilant, really sort of jumpy and horrible. And I started having these horrific flashbacks as well. And it was totally debilitating. You know, it was so frightening, so frightening. And I knew that something was really, really badly wrong. And so I had started going to the doctors and saying, like, I'm really not okay here. I am not okay. And in those assessments, we really just didn't talk about much of anything. It's like, oh, have you tried, you know, some of the normal avenues to support? And I remember saying to them, like, I'm telling you, like, something's really not okay. I am not okay. And I got prescribed antidepressants, and, you know, and off you go. And I ended up actually just having a pretty out of this world breakdown. It all sort of came to a head for me, and I was totally suicidal, and it wasn't how I thought it would be. I didn't feel like I had nothing to live for. I didn't feel like life wasn't worth living. I just, in these moments of what was happening to me, I just thought, I can't do this. I'd been trying so long to keep going through it. I really couldn't imagine how I could keep doing that. It just wasn't on the cards for me. So it was really, really frightening and horrible time. I was abusing alcohol. I mean, you reflect back and you realise you've done yourself absolutely zero favours on that one. But that's how I was raised. This is what we do. This is how we support it. And at times, actually, that had got me through nights where actually I didn't want to live. That had been a coping mechanism that had seen me through that night. But I didn't have anything else in my toolkit at all. I had nothing else to rely on. So that was like, and at that point, I definitely was in a really, really bad space. And something happened, and I don't know what it was, but something switched for me, and it was instantaneous in that. And I don't know how I'll ever be able to explain it, or whether I'll ever know quite what it was, but a light bulb happened to me. And I just realised that I was recreating the generational cycle. I was drinking too much, just like my dad, that I critiqued for that all my life. My mental health was really low. I was struggling to be present with my children. I was struggling to engage in my life, just like I had critiqued my mum for. And I just found myself there, and I just had this moment of, holy crap, okay, right. So then something's got to change. And so where I find myself today is kind of a product of the journey I went on to take when I had that moment. Trying to find the right help and support to do that really, really long piece of work to work out, okay, what just happened? That's all been totally mad. What am I gonna do about all of that? What aspects of me are actually me? What's actually sort of got any value to this world? And how do I do that alongside also being a mother of 3 and, trying to navigate whatever's been happening over the last couple of years. So it's been wild.
Wow.
Yeah.
So then 3 years ago, and this journey with what you're doing now, what was the sort of first step that you took? Because obviously that's a big step. That is big. That's hard to do. So where was like the first step for you then? What did you do to build this new version of you?
Well, first of all, it was being really, really honest, like proper self reflection. It's to talk openly and honestly with other people, and that is totally foreign to me because I grew up, we don't talk about those things. That's private, and so it was it felt frightening to say these things have happened, and I've done these things, and I've made mistakes as well, and just to own that truth. And then somehow once I'd done that, actually it's kind of like there was calm. I was most afraid of being vulnerable. I wrote a bit about this in a post I did on LinkedIn, and I was talking about asking for help, right? So I did ask for help. In all that chaos, when I was about 13, I had a really similar physical reaction, like a panic attack, really. It was a night where the police were there, and there was arguments, and my parents were hurting each other and me, and it was just awful. And I just broke down, and I said, just help me. I remember sobbing and saying, can help me. And I went to school, and I was like, I just need help. I remember sobbing and asking for help. And I felt really like it might come, because a police officer, I remember saying, I feel really worried about your daughter. And I thought, okay, he sees me. Something's going to happen. And I remember waiting for the weeks that followed that, thinking that somebody was going to come and something was going to change. And they just didn't. Nobody came and nothing changed. And, the message to me was actually, don't ask for help. It's not there. Or you're not important enough. What's the point? And so when I got back, add 20 years onto that, in my early 30s, having these same experiences, now I'm like, totally, I just feel horrific. Asking for help was so scary. And it's really difficult to explain that, I think, because for most people, maybe, you know, they grew up asking for help, even with just the small things, and getting it. And so the messaging is, you know, you ask for help, help is given, there you are. So it's really difficult to explain how very frightening it is to say, I need help, because it feels like the total failure. It feels like you just totally failed. You know, an example of that, right, is a part of my journey of getting well was to stop drinking. And I told my dad that. And he said to me, well, that's embarrassing. We handle our drink in this family. Don't tell anyone. People talk. And so that's the response to a really healthy choice that was right for me. And our family is like, oh no, don't tell people that. They'll judge you for it. So yeah, it was really, really frightening to get to the point of asking for help, because as far as I understood, it was total weakness, and I had let everybody down by not being able to hold the burden anymore. So it felt like, you know, more shame, more failure. And actually what awaited me was a world and a side of Portsmouth that I didn't know existed, because I had been totally sheltered from it. And, you know, that world is one way I say I need help and people say, sure. And it's like, and I keep speaking to people or meeting people in different capacities and asking for help, and people go, yeah, cool, all right, how can I help? And I'm like, what is this world? How did I not know about this world? I know I want to be part of this world. So my journey into where I am today is wanting to be part of the world where if somebody says I need help, I'm going to say, cool, I see you. What can I do to help, you know? And if I don't know what it is, then I'm going to be with you to find the answer for that. That's what I want to do. Because I had to shout pretty loud to be heard for the first time. And I was probably looking for help in all the wrong spaces, but I was honestly navigating blind. But now I understand this other part of Portsmouth, you know, like these other communities and the people and the organisations doing all these amazing things. I would be honoured to be a bridge between anybody that thinks, I don't know how to tell somebody all of this because this feels so heavy. And I feel, you know, it's all steeped in shame, and I feel like inherently dysfunctional, and I don't feel like I deserve this help, but I know I need it. If I can be the bridge for somebody and say to them, there's no judgment here, and actually there's loads of places that we can find you help, then that, you know, that's everything, isn't it? So
interesting. Okay, taking us back a bit then. So you said that you ran a business.
Yeah.
Plot twist.
Honestly, my career history is it's all of that. And part of that, like a couple of years ago when I was trying to work out, okay, so what do I do now? Like what are the good parts about me? I was looking at my career history as part of that and thinking, holy crap, like what do you make out of that? You know, if going back to the theme of self-sabotage, I left school and went to university to do criminology and psychology. I lasted like 3 or 4 months in Kingston, and then decided it wasn't for me. I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere, which is an interesting theme we should come back to. And then I decided, actually, what I really need to do is I need to go and do something totally different somewhere else. And so I came home and started working in a bar, and I saved up to go out and live in Ghana for 3 months. And so I went and did that, and it was amazing. I had the time of my life. It was the first time that I've been totally disconnected from my whole family system, and I was in, like, nobody in the world knew whereabouts in that world I was. And it was just like, sweet relief. It was beautiful. And the country's beautiful. It was lovely. But then I had to come home to reality. So I was like, okay, so I think I know what I want to do. I spent a bit of time out there, and I went to some of the health clinics, and I did a bit of time in the maternity ward, and I saw some of it, and I was like, yeah, I want to get involved in this. I'm going to do nursing. So I applied to be a nurse at Southampton University, and I got in, and I was like, and so adult nursing, I went and I did 3 years of that, 5 placements. I absolutely loved the practical aspect of it. I was like, I could see that I was thriving in that. It was really exciting. I was getting loads of feedback about how wonderful it was, how great I was doing, how I could definitely do this. And I felt quite empowered in that aspect. But then there was the other part of it, which was the essay writing and applying myself and holding myself accountable for my time and input. Shocking. I was shocking at it. And I just used to feel just stuck. Like a deadline would be coming up and I'd know I'd need to do something. And I just felt like total, like, I can't. I didn't know, what was getting in my way, but quite genuinely, I couldn't start. And I think, there's aspects of that to unpick. And I think as I sort of go further on in the future that, there's some things that I'm exploring that might hold some answers to that. But a lot of it, I think, was self-sabotage. And so I got right to the end part, but I didn't finish. And that sort of fed back into the feeling of being a failure. And, and then I've done some sort of work in the last few years that tell me what that might be, which has been interesting. But then I had met my husband, and we got married and we started having children, and we catered our own wedding. He's from Texas, so we did Texas barbecue, actually just trying to do it on a budget, and he's a total nerd and loves making food, and he was like, I'll just do this, I'll smash this out. And it was like brilliant. The food was banging. And like a love language for me has always been food. I used to cook for my siblings, I used to cook for myself. I used to pretend I had a little cooking show and make things out of, like, we had like tinned tomatoes, tinned salmon, and some wheat germ in our pantry at home. So whatever you can make up out of that, gourmet. So I loved catering for people, really enjoyed that aspect of it. So people started asking us about that, and we're like, hey, this might be a thing. So I had our children quite close together, and we started catering for, weddings and events around that. And it was good, it kind of worked for us. I could be flexible with my time. And then an opportunity came up through some people he knew to use a warehouse space in Portsmouth to do something. And having been in the street food scene and doing that, we were like, oh, well, I could do some sort of street food, something in here. I don't know, you didn't grow up in Portsmouth, did you? So
no, but I kind of know
the
it.
Cascades used to have a food court.
Did it?
Like, oh yeah, you like jacket potato,
Yeah.
all the really good stuff. But there was we'd go there sometimes, and what was really nice about it is it had different spaces. You could get different food, you could sit together. And I remember I loved that. So on the back of that, this idea was sort of born that we would have different street food vendors inside this warehouse, right, with seating, and everybody could eat what they wanted to eat together. And that project happened really quickly. So I think I referenced earlier, not having that agency to be able to say to people, I can't do that, that's too much. So we sat down to talk about kitting this old warehouse out, which at the time was like an old tea place where they'd been making tea. It had all these tea machines. Try and sell a tea bagging machine with a straight face, and you'll do better than I did. But I had to get rid of all this tea machinery and then make this food court, and we did it in like 6 weeks. And I did it a lot alone. Like there's a bar and a coffee bar in there. I built them by hand with my husband. Yeah. And we were working hard, and it was beautiful. like totally amazing. And all these different street food vendors in there. I was so proud of it. I really, really loved it. And I really, really enjoyed the community aspect of it. So we had people coming to ask us about holding different events in there and stuff. And I really love that. An absolutely shit salesperson. Like I honestly would like negotiate someone down on the price they were going to pay me, because I just want people to come and enjoy the food, right? So I was like giving stuff away. My brain doesn't work that way. I just want people to feel really like lovely. So shocking. And I really enjoyed the community aspect of that. In fact, we hosted, I think it was maybe the second year of the Pomodzi women's events in there. So it's really cool.
Whereabouts is it? Whereabouts was it even?
At Middle Street.
Yeah.
But all those things I talked about earlier, that was all happening there. So add in the working way over the top, I'd gone from being at home with 3 kids to basically being here all the time, and shifted away from being a mum, and it was just a perfect storm. And so about 11 months into that, COVID hit and we had to close. So fortunately for me, that forced my hand. And it was that time that was like, okay, so now I need to look at where I'm at. I need to tackle this, whatever's going on here, because I just am not coping. And it was during that time, as I'm sure so many people feel, right? It was during that time that the trajectory of my life just... And a big part of that was going and trying to find what help and support was available. And a big part of that was learning how to sit with my feelings and allowing traumatic memories to come up, and not discarding them, but in fact facing them, allowing them to be, and acknowledging them and working through it. And it's messy work. It's really intense. Okay. If you spent a lifetime not managing pain because you don't know how, so you just go and you put it in, it builds, and then when it's time for it to come out, it feels frightening. I genuinely felt like I might die when all of this was bubbling out of me, and it was just epic. It was really, really intense. But I was so lucky because statistically I shouldn't have had a partnership with someone who was really safe and calm and loving. But I did, lucky me. And I had my siblings, and they just loved me. Like through all of that, when I absolutely couldn't love myself and I couldn't find any redeeming qualities, they just stood by me and they just loved me. And they empowered me and they cheerleaded me to just keep going and just keep pushing through, processing it all. And that took me probably about 6 months, to be honest, to get through all of that trauma and unpick it all. And then to get to a point like, okay, so where am I now? And then what's left of me? Like try and, find the bricks and build them again. And so I always find this really interesting when I'm talking to people about trauma, because there's two different, to be sort of a bit, to simplify it a lot, there's 2 different types of trauma. So there's a one-off traumatic event or, moment, really impactful, horrendous, and it might rob you of everything that you are. And then you have to go and try and work out how to get back to, what you were before, or how to live alongside that traumatic event. And then there's chronic trauma that never allowed you to build a sense of identity or self-awareness. So you don't have a point you want to work back to. There's no, I just need to get back to who I was and feel that way. Instead, you're just bare. You're like, I don't have that litmus. I'm just here, just totally vulnerable, So now I need to work out and go on that sort of self-exploration that I didn't have the opportunity to do as a child. And I need to work out, okay, so who am I? And so that question at the beginning, right, when I say it's hard to answer, genuinely, it's hard to answer. I don't know all of it yet. I do now understand my values, and I know what I don't want. But I'm still building that picture for myself of who I am. And it's been really interesting to be in this work because there's so many amazing people and they're helping me to learn. And, every time I turn up at something, I'm learning a bit more about myself, and it's really exciting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I took a year out. So I think, I'm also like a chronic oversharer, probably applicable in this maybe. And I verbal. So I took like a year out, and then I knew that I was ready to get back into something. And I had no idea what that would be. As I said, I look back at my sort of career path like that. I knew what I didn't want. I didn't know what I did want. I knew some of the things that I would value, like being able to do the school runs, be more present with my children, like that top of the list. Okay, I know I don't want to be working around the clock anymore. I can't do that now. I want to be there. And then a friend of mine was working for this organisation, and they were doing an appeal to take supplies over to Ukraine on the Poland-Ukraine border. And they had this amazing response to it. So all the hallways in the Guildhall were just full of pallets and pallets of things. And actually they were just this small team trying to respond to this incredible amount of generosity, but also make sure that they stayed true to their commitment to get that there. So, bearing in mind the parenting network are already doing, operationally doing things outside of the offices for family support in Portsmouth. So they're trying to juggle those two things. And my friend said, we could really use some help. And I thought, yeah, okay, I'm ready. Let's go and have a look.
Okay.
And I turned up and loved it. It was a bit chaotic, probably felt very familiar. I was like, right, okay, let's go. And supported them with some of the logistics and getting all those things sort of organised, inventoried and over. And I just loved it. I loved the people that I was around, and I loved the way I felt when I was spending time there. And I had a chat with that friend, and actually with Matt, who's the founder, and I had shared a bit about my story, and I shared that actually, I've gotten to a point now I've sort of been looking at what support systems are available in Portsmouth. And I'm really interested in creating a space that people can do similar. I have met people over the last year in church halls, and they're seedy environments. But I knew there were loads of us. I also knew that the support systems that were unregulated felt quite unsafe. And so I was really interested in creating something that felt safe. And he said to me, well, you could do that. And I thought, this guy's having me right on. I honestly thought it was a joke. He said, no, I'm serious. Do the work, look into it, build a plan. You could do that. And I was like, okay. All right then, well, I'll stick around for a bit. In the meantime, I got a job as a facilitator, doing some of the, work, running some groups and stuff. And I loved that, and I loved working with the community. I started building a picture of what this project might look like. And that was 2.5 years ago. And that project starts this month.
Wow.
And it's been funded, and it's in partnership with an amazing, until I've signed the contract, I wouldn't like to say who they are, but with an amazing support organisation. And we are going to make that space. And we're going to make that space for 25 and under, but also based on the conversations that we've been having since we've moved into our new space here at the Bridge Centre. We're also going to make a space that's universal for any adult that is trying to unpick that experience as well. So it's just like it's beyond my wildest dreams, and I keep pinching myself that it exists because I showed up for myself, and because I worked hard, and because I connected with amazing people who gave me amazing opportunities. And I don't think that little version of me would quite believe that that's something that happened to us. So it's just so exciting.
Oh, I'm happy for you.
Thanks.
Really amazing. That's like full circle moment, right? And amazing. Okay, we're gonna just go back again.
Okay.
And we're gonna no, it's fine. And we're gonna dig into a bit when you said about belonging. And another thing, just a bit of a side note, do you get imposter syndrome?
It's like rampant. It's always.
Really?
It's always. I don't. The only time I don't have imposter syndrome is when I'm talking to somebody that turns up here or comes to one of our groups, and we're just talking, and I might take the conversation away from small talk, and I'll hit a home run with them, and they'll share something with me just because they felt like they wanted to. And that's the only time when I think, cool, okay, this, like, I can do this. I can help people to access away from the small talk, and we can talk about the real issues. And in that moment, I feel like really purposeful, and I feel like this is what I want to do and what I'm meant to do. Every other moment, I just feel like somebody's going to go, what the fuck are you doing here? Sleep. I don't know. I speak to lots of people. They say that their experience is similar. Maybe, yeah, I don't know. I think I might always feel like an imposter. But the belonging, I have that now. Okay. And that's really, like, that is the most special thing that I've ever had, because so the opposite of belonging is fitting in, and for all of my life it was about fitting in. And I can go back and I can reflect on it now, and I'm so lucky to have access to resources and incredible training and other professionals that share stuff with me. And I now know, I was a chronic people pleaser. I was constantly trying to manage my environment and the people in it to keep myself and others safe. And I learned how to mask myself to be what I needed to be in that time and space to keep the peace. And so I was just a person of loads of masks. I would be a joker if it called for it. I'd be the protector and motherly person if it called for it. I was switching in and out of what I felt the environment called for. But I never had space to just be myself. So I was, just constantly people pleasing and masking, trying to fit in. And then it's only post the meltdown, if we call it that I finally know what it's like to be somewhere and be authentically myself and not mask, and people accept me. And it's like gives me tingles still when I go somewhere, and I'm like, I'm goofy and I swear a lot and I stumble over my words and I'm quite annoying. But when I go to spaces and I am just me, and people are just loving and caring and we're just having a nice time, I go home and I'm like, what is this world? I'm like, what? I get to be me, and I'm being well received, and that's really nice. It's not the most important thing by any means, but it's really nice to be myself and to feel accepted in different spaces. So it's, and I absolutely can't believe that I've got there on the back of telling the truth. That's, it's totally black and white to the way that I was raised, and it's cost me a lot of relationships to be honest and open.
Really?
A lot. And that's okay, because they're not relationships that are going to serve me in this version of my life. I've been every version of me, down to like the most piece of shit version of myself, and I know what I need to do to stay at this end of the scale. And so, you know, you do lose a lot, but you gain so much more. And it's just, you know, I want that for me, and I want that for my children. And I want that for anybody else that wants that. I put a lot of energy when I was growing up trying to support people that weren't interested in change. You know, they weren't ready for it, interested in it. I don't know what the answer was, but all my energy went into a few people that took it all. And now, like, I'm clued up on some things quite a bit, and I can help myself first. And that's become, you know, the biggest life skill I've ever had. But also, you know, if somebody says, oh, I need help, I can say, okay, so here's what I did, or here's what so-and-so did, you know, or so-and-so down here does this, and they might listen, and then they might take that advice or not, but they've got choices, and I hope that I could sort of show them a way that's going to work for them. But yeah, it's all about not channeling all of that into negative space anymore instead. Yeah.
Okay, so letting go of relationships that don't serve you, how was it letting go of the first person who didn't serve you anymore?
Frightening.
Yeah.
So frightening. Yeah, and this is such a huge part of what I hope we can create, right? So this is around social messaging as well, because what I've come to realise I stand for, like really stand for, is for everybody to be able to have a voice. But socially, we like to say things like, well, you only get one mum, or, you know, your dad's your dad, you only get one. Oh, but, you know, like, he won't live forever. You know, those sorts of, people tend to sort of naturally just say it in response to people sharing really difficult things. So that made it so much harder. It made it so much harder when I knew that I had to step away from relationships with my parents, not because I don't love them. The love, you know, that unwavering. I love them deeply. I'm very, very lucky to be at a position where I also am not cross with them, angry with them. I don't hold resentment for them. You know, I got humbled pretty good. And I think, you know, I understand. I know you did the best with what you had at the time. I know that to be true. I'm not sort of cross with you. But people just find that so hard to accept. You know, when I see people, how's your mum? I say, I don't know how my mum is. You know, I think she's all right. But anyway, you know, we try and move the topic on because we don't want that person to feel uncomfortable. But they'll push it back. You know, push back. Oh, you don't see your mum? Oh no, or your dad, or, you know, or your uncle, or whoever it might be. And so you always have to be defensive. You know, especially if it's early days, right? And you've just tried to make this decision for yourself, which is huge. To have people then reflect back to you that was not the right decision. And that was, you know, it's really difficult. Like, you feel like you're just dodging punches wherever you go. And it's a lot. And I think a lot of people get bullied back into unsafe relationships because it's just too much to always have to try and miss those comments, you know. And I've really come to be so interested in what we say to people matters. You know, how we respond to when they share something with us, that really matters for somebody. And so it really was difficult. And I lost some other familial relationships as well because of that, because of the disgust at me, you know, disconnecting myself. People were really upset about it. A lot of people didn't understand it. And I think, you know, in those systems as well, there's a lot of codependency. And it was worry, you know, a lot of people were worried about cutting those relationships and what that impact would be on the person that I cut relationship with. And really only, I'm again grateful for some healthy relationships and friendships who said, okay, this is about you. You know, you do what you need to do to be safe. But I hear it all the time. I hear it here at work. I hear it everywhere I go. People making those sorts of flippant comments, and it's it's just, I think it stalls people's progress, because being socially accepted is, it's really big for everyone, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
So do you talk to your mum now?
No, I was really lucky to have an interaction with her. And it was about a year into this, and I just, as I said to you, I started with the Parenting Network, and they just said, you can do this and you can build this project. So I bumped into her around that time, and we were sort of just talking nicely, just the sort of, the small talk. And I said, I'm doing this project. I'm making a project around trauma and how to sort of, support yourself to overcome it. And she said to me, can I stop you a moment? I'm really sorry about the trauma. And I said, I know. You did the best with what you had, I know. And she said to me, I didn't have the courage to do that. And I said, and I know. And we had a hug. And I'm so grateful. I didn't need that to move forward, but I'm so grateful that I had that, because, our lives still aren't meant to be together. We are on really different paths, but I just thought, I felt really proud of her, and I felt really grateful, because that would have taken a lot. And I realised that was a massive gift that she had given me. So it was nice. I think that we can't all make these big impacts, right? So when you sort of look at things and you reflect on them, and you're trying to recognise the value in things and people, it's not always massive, but even just a little small step in that direction is, it's huge progress between us. And it's really meaningful to me. And so I'm really grateful for that, I suppose. Nice. Yeah.
And that was, okay. No, fair enough.
It was a long time ago, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I needed to make space with my relationship with my dad as well. And he passed away a couple of months ago, actually. And that was, so it's sort of thrown, the last quite a few years now, I've been separate from all of that, focused solely on my life, my experiences, and I have been living in this beautiful bubble. And it's pulled me back into that, and it's been really, I've been frightened of it for a really long time, because my dad was sick for a really long time. He died of alcoholism, and it's a very ugly way to die. And so I was really frightened about it, but I knew eventually it would happen. And it has been really, really difficult. But some things have come out of it that they just push me more and more to do this work. Like I share with you, like it's so, I find this really poignant. My dad called up his sister not long before he died. And he said to her, I think I know what was the problem with our parents. I think I figured out what happened and why all those things happened. And he said, I think they hated us. And she told me that just after he had died. And, my first reaction was to feel so very sad for him, that in all his years, he still believed that he was the reason that his parents would have treated him badly, and that he was hated. And I also felt really grateful to have been able to do work to understand that everybody else's behaviour is a reflection of them and not of me. And, my parents' actions were not a reflection of me. They're a reflection of what was going on for them. I'm not responsible for any of their behaviour or their actions. I feel really lucky to know now what I didn't know before, which is that it wasn't personal. It wasn't personal at all. In fact, it wasn't even directed at me, really. I was just caught up in the mess of it. and that they love me the best way they knew how. And I'm so grateful for the peace of that. And to learn that he didn't have that peace to the last minute, you know, well, it explains why he died, right? How unsettling that is. It's powerful. You know, for me in this experience, I think for some people that it might feel over the top to hear it, but like dedicating myself to doing this work for me and for mine is absolutely life and death. And if it is life, it's not a life I'm interested in. So it's like, it is so very important. And the more I look at it, the more I can see how much it hasn't served my family for a really long time. And I just, you know, we talked a bit about family trees earlier, didn't we, like before? So my family tree is pretty spicy. And you know, you think about your legacy, don't you? Like, what will it be? What makes me? Why am I here? What's important? You know, what is the point of me? And so I realised that I'm so lucky to be doing this at a time where I've got access to people and resources, like infinite resources as well, and the support system I need to fundamentally change the way I live my life, so that I can model to my children how to be safe and how to, you know, engage safely with the world and to feel safe. And I just feel really, really lucky. And I don't know why I'm lucky. And sometimes, you know, I've really grappled with the guilt around that. Why do I get a second chance at it and they didn't? Like, it feels heavy, but it has happened, and I do have the opportunity, and I don't take it lightly, because it's, you know, it's life and death for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's where we're at today.
That's where we're at today. Yeah.
So you launch your actual project very soon.
Yeah.
And that's your aim with it as well. I mean, that's what I was going to ask. Do you plan ahead? Is that something that you used to do, and is that something that you do now?
In what terms?
In terms of, like, let's say professionally and personally? Professionally and personally.
Somewhat. Again, it's part of this learning journey, right? I've come to learn I'm a creature of habit, and I didn't even know that. But I like, you know, habits at home. I'm very habitual about the way that I sort of manage my own private time. In work, I've joined this organisation at a really pivotal point, and we haven't been able to plan clearly because we are responsive and we're opportunists. And so we've been sort of presented with opportunities, and we've just gone, all right, you know, I'm so lucky to work in this work. It's amazing to work in a sector and in an organisation that can be so dynamic. You know, we've listened to people when they've told us what they want and need, and we've looked at what funding is available and what capacity we have, and we've gone, let's do it. You know, like, let's not muck around, let's go. So having a vision in terms of intricacies, no. In terms of general outcomes and sort of staying true to values, very much so. You know, the vision is to be a community support. You know, it's to always be restorative and always be relational and always really listen to what people tell you they need and want, because they're the best experts at what it is that we need to build. And that's that, you know, we're trying to be a part of a huge puzzle, you know, just one small part of it. We're giving opportunities for people to connect and find support if they need it. So my project Embrace is, you know, it's one aspect of it, and it's a new aspect. You know, obviously when I say it, it's all quite heavy, isn't it? I know the first part of this has all been quite like, oh, but for me, it sits in alongside a number of projects which are about, you know, sort of general support, really. You know, we've got loads of things. I hope that people might have a look at our website and see all the work we do. Predominantly, we just work with families in a really sort of open way. We do stay in play groups and all sorts, we feed people a lot. I love that, obviously. We do have targeted stuff for dads. We've got a baby bank next door which supports about 120 families a month with the things they need for their baby. So we're there in a really practical support sort of sense, but also in that connection and community sense. So we know what we want to achieve is supporting our community, creating opportunities for connection and creating pathways to support if people need more than that. And just listening, that's something I can bring to this organisation, and it's not, it will run just fine without me. There's nothing special about what I bring to it, but that is something I can do, which is listen and be vulnerable. And it feels really horrible, to be honest. I'm gonna go home. I'm gonna think about everything I shared with you today. I'm gonna think, oh God, why did I do it? But actually, the reason I do it is because there'll be somebody that resonates. There'll be somebody that's not there yet. And when you're in a position where you feel that vulnerable, just to hear anybody say, I don't judge you for that. Oh my gosh, yeah, I've been through that. There's don't hope that there's a better future for you. Have faith that there's a better future for you. It's just everything, and it might be the reason that somebody keeps pushing forward, So I think it's my duty to share it, because I know for me it was so impactful, and I've also seen it in my own family system, right? So I am very, very lucky to have a lot of beautiful and wonderful brothers and sisters. And I'll share one relationship because I have permission to do so, and that's my sister. And about the time that I was going through this experience, I started to share with her what was happening for me. I started talking to her about what was going on. I started talking to her about some of the things I was really ashamed about, some of the behaviour that I wish that I wasn't doing. Drinking was a big part of that. And but more than that, we started to talk openly about our experiences, and I started to be vulnerable with her. And she, just a couple of months behind me, at the time, for her, a coping mechanism was food. And she was significantly overweight, which is kind of unimportant. She was very unhappy, and she knew that it was having impacts on her health, much like I knew that drinking was having impacts on mine. And she had heard in me sharing my story so much that she resonated with, that she started asking more, and she wanted to shift too. And so we've been doing this journey together, and we've been being vulnerable together. And, not just about the flashbacks and the trauma, but also about, the really crappy responses that we've decided to build for those, and trying to shed behaviour that doesn't serve us anymore, and being really honest about it rather than holding it in shame. And she's a totally different person. She's totally different because, for every weight loss attempt over the years, it never worked because she never loved herself. And we started focusing on loving ourselves and finding the value within us instead, and focusing on that and wanting to take care of this vessel that we have to do life in. And all of a sudden, the byproduct of that is being healthy. And it's been fascinating, two different maladaptive behaviours, but the same outcome is actually I have to learn how to love myself, to want to take care of myself. And so we are in contact a lot about this, and actually she has come on board to co-facilitate this group with me, which is just brilliant.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, so it's really special, and it's very personal, and she has, no doubt different experiences to share with people too. And that's what's going to be important about making this project work, is about bringing as many people with as many different experiences into it so that others can hear parts of their story within it. Because, I'm not the answer for most. Some people resonate with my experience and many not. It was pretty crappy growing up in it, but I can't ignore these privileges that I have as well, right? I'm a white British woman growing up in a world that doesn't seek me out to judge me. I'm not impacted by loads of other factors that other people have to get through just to be seen and heard. So I recognize I can't be a voice for most, but we're making a starting point, and I don't know what the vision long term is other than being disruptive and loud and revisiting some of that language we talked about earlier, that, but you only get one mum, let's just we've had enough of that. Let's do better. We'll do better than that. It's been, one of the other fascinating things is speaking to just really quite a lot of people that, and professionals that have said to me, like, we mustn't talk about trauma because it's very triggering, and we could trigger somebody and we could upset them. And I was just like, I heard that a couple of years back, and I was like, it's really niggling me. It's really annoying me, actually. From my perspective, there's nothing more triggering than denying somebody's reality, actually. Trauma, people that have experienced trauma know what it's like to talk about trauma or to sit with trauma. That's not really the trigger, in my opinion. The trigger is denying it exists and expecting everybody to meet the same milestones in life and not looking at the fact that a lot of people start at a really different starting line and they've got a lot of catch up. So trauma isn't just the things that happen to us, but it's also the absence of things that ought to have. So we've, some people they've got a long way to go just to get to what some people might have walked out of their childhood with. And so I really am interested in changing the narrative around that, because I don't think that to be trauma informed is just to be kind. I think it's to say that everybody's story has a place, and you can tell your story whenever you want to. And actually, we it's blown my mind to see some of the clinical research around what it would be called as adverse childhood experiences, and there's so much research around it. Like, in a really rudimentary way, there's this scoring card. It's 10 different adversities that they've put down, and if you tick 4 or more, then they show you your statistics. It's prolific. It is totally mind-blowing for cancers, for heart disease, for addiction, for just everything going. 12 times more likely to commit suicide. That sort of correlation between cause and effect is like, we shouldn't be ignoring that, actually. That's really important that we acknowledge that and we say, okay, that's... So actually, if these things have happened to you, it's not a prerequisite. You won't definitely, but you may experience these sorts of things. In fact, we might anticipate it. So if you do, this is how you need to, this is who you need to call, where you need to go to get help. We expect that might happen. That is normal for people in that situation. Whereas we don't seem to get ahead of that information, so that when people are already in crisis, then they're trying to find help, and then they might learn these things when they get to the crisis support. But that's not really fair. We know if you smoke, you're going to have a higher chance of getting lung cancer. You can't buy a packet of cigarettes without being reminded about that. So it's really interesting to me that we're kind of ignoring this really, really important whole massive collection of studies and data that support that actually if you go through those sorts of experiences, your outcomes are invariably, marred. So I'd like to be a part of a collective voice around that as well. Okay. That's the idea anyway.
That's the future. That's what it has to hold.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
Okay.
Right. Well, April.
I'm sorry.
We'll wrap up. But thank you for sharing. And it's been it's opened my eyes to some stuff, and yeah, it's actually inspired me as well. And thank you.
Oh, I'm very pleased to hear that.
But I'm excited to see your project.
Thank you.
I'm excited to see how it all goes again.
I've got a really big sense that you're going to come and be a part of it in some way. I hope
That'd
you
be
will.
amazing.
That would be cool.
It'd be amazing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you for being a guest.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Oh, amazing. Amazing. Does our childhood define who we are as adults?
I don't think it defines us. Rather, it does play a role in shaping us, I'd say.
Okay, interesting. And yourself?
I think similar. I think it does help to define who you are in some aspects, but you can always change the course of your life from when you're a child. So,
Do you think our childhoods define who we are in our adulthood?
I think that's debatable. I think some people can change and some people are better at dealing with things, but others, it has more an effect on them.
Okay, interesting. And
I just think throughout life people develop on who they are throughout life. That answers your question.
does your childhood define how you are in your adulthood?
Yes and no, because it forms your personality, but it depends on how you look on your how you look on your childhood and your. So it's more about that. How about you? How you think about what's happened, and so you're not this.
Definitely not. No, I feel like, you kind of sculpt your own surroundings. To be honest, there's nothing that hard work can't do. Like I've moved down here literally 2 days ago, from Shropshire, so it's about 4 hours away to start a job with my dreams.
Nice.
So and if you look at me back then, you wouldn't have thought that could have happened. So I feel like if you put yourself around the right people and work hard, then you'd be fine.
Childhood define how we are in our adulthood?
It's a very good start to defining how we are in adulthood, absolutely.
Really? Would you like to expand?
So I think the influence of your parents is really, really important, and how you're brought up. So you could start life in a completely different place, have for whatever reason, and then maybe you get foster parents or you're adopted or whatever, and that can transform your life, and how you are as an individual.
Oh, I love that. That's cool, isn't
Cool.
it? Yeah.
All right. So, what are your thoughts?
I think they were all great answers. Yeah. I loved how they had to really contemplate it, some of them. Really, didn't they? Measured. What do I think about that? Yeah, I love listening to that, and I could probably do that more, to be honest. So that's fun. We should do that again. I think, you can see. I think you can see a little snapshot of somebody's journey by the way that they answer that. And certainly that the younger guy, who's obviously just got this really proud achievement that's happening. He's obviously very proud of that, and I can see that maybe that's been pushing himself to do that too. So I think all of those answers were really right, weren't they? It does take really hard work. I think it does have the power to define you, for sure. But I think you have the power to course correct. I know that you do, because I have. And I really think, I think a huge part of that is to just be seen and heard for what it was and validated in that, to get the permission, the self-permission to go put it to rest and move forward. But I loved seeing how everybody really needed to think about that. I think it's a big question, isn't it?
It's a big one, right?
What do you think, Alex?
I don't think it does. I think it has, it does in our childhood, because that's what we're surrounded by. But I don't think it defines how we are in adulthood. I think, as soon as we get the opportunity to leave, or we separate from our parents or guardians, wherever they are, I think then we're then faced with who we become. And I think it's the environment we surround ourselves with and the stories and the things you tell yourself. I think that's what, personally for me, then defines who we are and what we believe. So yeah, it's multifaceted, I believe. But yeah.
Cool, big question. Like it.
Well, yeah, no, but it's been great. And any closing thoughts? Anything you'd like to say?
Just that I feel privileged to share, and I hope that people will hear the share in the vein of which it's meant, which is just to raise, a bit of awareness around it. I don't know. I love working with people. It's a privilege just to be here, to work here, and to meet so many people, and it's an exceptional privilege when they want to share a part of their story with me. So I love what you do. I think it's really exciting, and I'd love to hear even more. Yeah, it's just super exciting.
Amazing. Well, thank you, April, and yeah, I look forward to seeing what's next.